The training deck of the Galactic Naval Academy was a symphony of controlled chaos. Artificial gravity, set to 1.5 standard, made every movement a deliberate effort. The air smelled of ozone, recycled sweat, and the sharp, clean scent of machine lubricant. In one corner, a group of lithe, amphibious Selenians practiced fluid evasion drills. In another, a pair of hulking Tarkonians grunted as they strained against hydraulic resistance machines. Cadet June, a human from Sol, felt the heavy air in his lungs. He moved through a basic footwork pattern, his boots sticking slightly to the deck with each step. At 19, he was younger than most here. Humanity was still a new member of the Galactic Commons, and its cadets often felt they had everything to prove. June believed in the rules. The Academy's code was strict, built on the idea that strength must be tempered with discipline. He took it seriously. Nearby, Cadet Gorv, a Tarkonian whose broad shoulders seemed to block the harsh overhead lights, was growing bored with his assigned drill. His partner was a much smaller Clixian, a species that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a crystal figurine. The Clixian, named Tick, was fast but fragile. The drill was simple. Practice moving a weighted crate together across a marked zone. Gorv, however, decided to modify the exercise. "This is too slow." His voice was a low rumble like grinding stones. He ignored the proper lifting points on the crate. Instead, he positioned himself at one end and gave a mighty heave, intending to shove the entire load across the zone in one push. Tick, caught off guard, was pinned between the heavy crate and a solid support beam on the deck's edge. A sharp, distressed chittering sound escaped Tick's mouthparts. The safety protocols were clear. No cadet was to use equipment to trap or endanger another. It was a basic tenet of interspecies training. June saw it happen. He didn't think. His feet were moving before his mind had fully processed the command. "Stop! You are violating the safety protocol," he called out, his voice cutting through the din of grunts and whirring machines. Gorv paused, the crate leaning dangerously against Tick. He turned his heavy-browed head toward June, his dark eyes narrowing. "What did you say, little human?" "The rule. You are using the mass to trap your partner. It is not allowed." June stood his ground, pointing at the Academy manual glowing on a nearby screen. "You must use the correct grips." A few other cadets had stopped to watch. A slender Selenian female, Vril, glided closer, her large, black eyes curious. A faint, clicking sound, her species' version of amusement, came from her. Gorv let out a short, derisive bark. "Rules? I am demonstrating efficiency. Your rules are for the weak." He gave the crate another shove, and Tick let out a pained squeak. That was enough. June stepped forward and placed his own hands on the crate, not to fight Gorv's strength, but to try and tilt it just enough to relieve the pressure on Tick. It was a futile effort against Gorv's mass, but it was a clear act of defiance. Gorv's amusement vanished. "You dare?" he snarled. He released the crate, letting it slam fully against the beam, trapping Tick completely. In one fluid, terrifyingly fast motion for his size, Gorv turned and swung a massive, four-fingered fist. June tried to duck, but the gravity seemed to thicken around him. The blow didn't land cleanly, but it caught him on the side of the head and shoulder, sending him spinning to the hard deck. His vision swam with bursts of light. A hot, wet trickle immediately traced a path from his hairline down his temple that he tried to push himself up. Gorv loomed over him. "Look at the fragile human," Gorv announced to the growing circle of onlookers. "He bleeds from a love tap." He grinned, showing rows of flat, grinding teeth. He thought his little paper rules would protect him. Then the laughter started. Gorv's deep, mocking chuckle. And from Vril, a higher, rapid series of clicks and clacks that was unmistakably gleeful. She pointed a webbed finger at June's face. "The red paint is flowing. It matches the warning lights. How fitting." The sound of it was worse than the pain. The laughter spread to a few others, a nervous titter from a mammalian species, a low hum from another. They were not all cruel, but they were bystanders. And in this moment, the spectacle of the confident Earthborn cadet brought low was funny. It was a lesson in knowing your place. From the very edge of the crowd, Cadet Park Mina watched. She had been observing a combat simulation on a terminal and had turned only when the noise shifted. Her dark eyes took in the scene. The trapped Cliction, the bleeding June, the laughing Gorv. Her face, framed by dark hair cut neatly at her jaw, showed no anger, no shock. It was still, like the surface of a deep lake. She did not step forward. She did not speak. She simply watched as the medical drones finally buzzed into the circle, their sterile lights flashing as they attended to Tick and then to June, who was lying back on the cold deck, staring at the ceiling, the laughter still ringing in his ears. The sound, he thought, was the hardest thing to bear. It made the principle he had defended feel small and foolish. He closed his eyes, but he could not close his ears. The medical bay was a place of quiet hums and soft light. The air smelled of antiseptic, a familiar smell on any world. June lay on a treatment bed. A small robotic arm, delicate as a spider, moved over the gash on his brow. There was a slight sting, then a cool numbness as it sealed the wound with a synthetic tissue bond. It would not even leave a scar. The physical healing was the easy part. The shame was a heavier weight. It sat on his chest, making his breaths shallow. He replayed the moments in his mind. Tick's chittering cry, the feeling of Gorv's fist, the awful sound of laughter climbing into the air, wrapping around him. He had followed the rules. He had done the right thing, and he had been made into a joke. His hands, resting at his sides, clenched into fists. The door panel slid open with a whisper. June expected a medic or maybe Commander Kale for a disciplinary note. It was neither. Park Mina walked in. She moved with a calm efficiency, not rushing, but not wasting motion. She carried a standard-issue datapad. She did not ask him how he was feeling. She did not offer a look of pity. Her face was as composed as it had been on the deck. The Cliction cadet, Tick, has a cracked chitin plate. It will be repaired in 2 hours, she said, her voice even. She pulled a stool over and sat beside his bed. Gorv received a verbal warning for unsafe conduct. No formal mark on his record. June turned his head to look at her. A spark of anger cut through the shame. A warning? He could have crushed Tick. He attacked me. He argued you interfered with a drill and he lost his balance. The cameras were partially blocked by the cargo crate. It was your word against his, and the word of a Tarkonian champion carries more weight than that of a first-year human cadet here. She stated it not cruelly, but as a simple fact, like reciting the weather. They laughed because they saw only the blood. They did not see the reason it was spilled. What does that matter? June said, his voice tight. The result is the same. I look weak. He looks strong. The rules did not help. The rules are not a shield, Mina replied. She activated her datapad. A holographic image sprang to life above it, showing the footage from the training deck. It was from a high, wide-angle camera. She zoomed in on Gorv. They are a tool. Watch. She played the sequence. Gorv shoving the crate. June stepping in. Gorv's reaction. She played it again. And again. Look at his feet, she instructed. When he turns to strike you, his right heel comes off the deck. All his weight is on the front leg. He is off balance because he is angry. He is not thinking. June watched, the scene now feeling distant, like a tactical problem. So? He is still strong enough to knock me down. Strength is not just muscle, Mina said. She switched the display. Now it showed abstract diagrams, lines of force and vectors. It is placement. It is timing. It is the mind. She looked at him. They laugh because they believe the fight is only about power. They think your principle is a weakness. But it is a weapon they do not understand. What weapon? Losing. The weapon is knowing why you were there, she said, her dark eyes holding his. He fought to dominate. You acted to protect. The laughter is their way of trying to make your reason seem foolish. We will not let them. The word we hung in the sterilized air. June slowly sat up. What are you saying? I am saying I will train you, not to beat him in a test of strength. You will never win that. She switched off the datapad. I will train you to be so calm, so focused, that you can see every mistake he makes. You cannot shout louder than him, Jun. So you must become quiet. So quiet inside that his anger sounds like thunder, and you can hear the spaces between the rolls. It was a strange idea. It was not about getting stronger, but about becoming still. Why would you do this? Jun asked. He and Mina were friendly, but not close. She was always observing, always studying. Mina's gaze drifted to the blank wall of the medbay as if seeing something else. On Earth, in my city, there is a gate. It is called the Independence Gate. Long ago, a very powerful country tried to take my homeland. They were bigger. They had more guns. For a long time, they laughed at the idea my people could resist. They were not laughing at the end. They did not understand that the will to be free is a different kind of strength. She looked back at him. Gorv is like that. He only understands the strength that takes. He does not understand the strength that endures. We will show him. Plan. It was not a complaint to the officers. It was not a reckless challenge. It was a cold, deliberate strategy. The heavy feeling on Jun's chest began to loosen, not into happiness, but into purpose. The laughter still echoed in his memory, but now it sounded farther away, like a noise from another room. What is the first step? He asked, his voice firmer. Mina stood up. Rest. Let the medics finish. The first step begins tomorrow, at 0500, in the secondary gymnasium. It is not on Gorv's schedule. Wear loose clothing. We will start with breathing. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, then turned and left. The room was quiet again, but the silence felt different now. It was no longer the silence of defeat. It was the silence before the first move in a game only Mina seemed to fully understand. Jun lay back down. He stared at the ceiling, but this time he was not seeing the moment he fell. He was trying to imagine what it meant to become quiet. The secondary gymnasium was a small, older dome used mostly for storage and solo practice. At 0500, it was cold and silent. The only light came from the simulated dawn creeping through the high, dusty viewports. Jun entered, his breath making small clouds in the chilled air. He saw Mina in the center of the open floor. She was not warming up. She was standing perfectly still, her eyes closed, her hands loose at her sides. She heard his footsteps and opened her eyes. Good. Stand here. She pointed to a spot facing her. Jun stood, feeling awkward. Are we going to run? Do strength drills? No, Mina said. We are going to breathe. Copy me. She took a slow, deep breath in through her nose, her shoulders remaining perfectly still. Her abdomen expanded. She held the breath for a count of 4, then let it out through her mouth in a long, controlled stream that seemed to take a full minute. Again, they stood in the cold, dim room and breathed. For what felt like an hour, they just breathed. Jun's mind raced. He thought about Gorv. He thought about the laughter. He thought about how silly this was. His breaths were short and choppy. Your mind is a loud room, Mina said, her voice calm in the stillness. You must quiet it. Do not fight the thoughts. Acknowledge them and then let them pass like a cloud. Focus only on the air entering and the air leaving. It was frustrating. Felt like doing nothing. But Mina's own calm was absolute. Slowly, as the false dawn brightened, Jun's breathing began to slow. His thoughts, while still there, started to settle like sediment in water. After a long time, Mina moved. Now we move. She shifted into a basic, neutral stance, knees slightly bent. This is not an attack pose. This is a waiting pose. Your balance must be perfect, like a tree with deep roots. Push me. Jun put his hands on her shoulders and pushed. She yielded, turning her body just so, and his push slid past her without moving her center. He almost stumbled. You didn't resist. Resisting a greater force is stupid. You redirect it. You use its own energy. She had him stand in the stance again. She walked around him, making small adjustments with a touch of her finger. A tight shoulder here is a thought about losing. A locked knee is a fear of falling. You must be loose to adapt. The sessions continued like this every morning. There were no flashy kicks, no powerful strikes. Mina taught him how to fall without getting hurt, rolling with the impact. She taught him footwork that was all about maintaining balance and creating angles, never about a head-on charge. She used principles from an ancient earth practice called kendo, the way of the sword, but there was no sword. It was all about posture, distance, and the state of the mind. In kendo, she explained one day as they practiced a simple stepping motion, the most important strike is the one you do not take. The victory is sometimes in making your opponent miss, in waiting for the perfect moment they give you. Gorv will give you many moments. He is impatient. During the regular academy day, June was careful. He did not glare at Gorv. He did not mutter or show anger. He simply went to his classes, did his work, and when he passed Gorv in the halls, he would give a small, neutral nod, as if to a piece of furniture. It confused the Tarkonian more than any insult would have. Meanwhile, Mina began her own work. She did not talk about June or the incident. Instead, in their shared history and tactics seminars, she began to speak when called upon. Her answers were always precise, but she started to frame them with human examples. One day, the topic was sustaining morale under siege. Other cadets spoke of famous orbital blockades or last stands on alien worlds. When Commander Kale called on Mina, she stood. "There is a human example," she said. Her voice was clear and carried no boastfulness. During a war on Earth, in a place called Sol, a force was ordered to hold a hill to protect the retreat of others. They were outnumbered. They had little ammunition. They knew they would likely die. The room was listening. Stories of sacrifice were common in military lore. They held for 3 days, Mina continued. Not for glory, not because they thought they could win. They held because the soldiers to their north, their allies, needed time to get to safety. They bought that time with their lives. When the last soldier fell, the position was overrun. But the retreat was successful. She paused, letting the silence settle. That is one kind of strength. It is not the strength to take a hill. It is the strength to know what the hill is for. The room was quiet. Gorv, sitting in the back, shifted in his seat, looking bored. But others were thoughtful. Commander Kale gave a slow nod. A tactical sacrifice. The calculus of duty. Proceed, cadet. Mina sat down. She did not look at June. She did not look at Gorv. She had simply planted a seed. She was not trying to make them admire humanity. She was trying to make them understand a different type of power. The power of a principle. Later, in the mess hall, June heard 2 avian cadets discussing the hill in Seoul. They were not laughing. They were debating the logistics of the defense, the weight of the order. The laughter from the training deck was not gone, but a new sound was being introduced into the academy. The sound of consideration. June practiced his breathing that night in his quarters. In hold out, he imagined his mind as a quiet room. He imagined his body as a tree, rooted and patient. He was not yet strong, but he was becoming quiet. And in that quiet, for the first time, he could hear the faint, crumbling sound of Gorv's certainty. The change in the academy was slow, like a shift in the weather. You could not point to a single moment, but the air felt different. Gorv still moved through the halls with his usual swagger, but the glances he received had changed. Before, they were looks of simple respect for his size or fear. Now, some held a question. The story of the hill in Seoul had a strange staying power. It was not about victory, and that made it impossible to dismiss. Mina continued her quiet campaign. She never raised her voice. In the academy's shared digital forums, where cadets posted articles and theories, she began to contribute. Her posts were never flagged as human pride. They were labeled as tactical or historical studies. She posted a short, text-based account of the Battle of the Imjin River. She wrote about a small force holding a line against a massive wave of attacks for 3 days. She focused not on the glory, but on the mechanics. How they used the terrain, how they rotated defenders, how their discipline held when hope was gone. The post ended with a simple question. At what point does stubbornness become a tactical asset? The discussion thread grew long. Cadets from a species known for their logic debated the statistical breaking point. A hive-mind cadet argued about the synchronization of a unit under stress. Gorv scoffed in the thread, calling it a story for losers, but his comment was buried under serious, analytical replies. June saw all this, but his world had narrowed to the cold gymnasium and the lessons. Mina was a relentless teacher. She had him practice one move for a week. A simple turn of the hips and a step to the side. "This is not to dodge," she corrected him. "This is to reposition. You are not running. You are choosing a new ground." She used a soft training drone that would shoot a harmless light beam at him. His only job was to not get hit, using only his footwork and the simple turn. At first, he was painted with light constantly. He grew frustrated. "I just need to move faster." "No," Mina said, stopping the drone. "You need to decide sooner. The decision is here." She tapped her temple. "Not here." She tapped his leg. "You see the drone's arm move, you know where the beam will go. You move before it fires. It is not reaction. It is prediction." It was exhausting in a way heavy lifting never was. It was a constant strain on his mind. But slowly he got better. The beams missed more often. His movements became smaller, more efficient. He stopped flinching. One afternoon, Mina brought a different tool. It was a simple, padded staff. "Today, you learn to fall correctly with an impact," she said. "Gorv will try to grab you. If he does, you must not fight his grip. You must use it." She showed him. She had him hold her wrist lightly. Then, instead of pulling away, she surged forward, turning her body, using his own hold as a pivot point to throw him off balance. The move ended with her behind him, his arm extended and vulnerable. He is stronger, so you must be closer. His reach is longer, so you must be inside it. His anger is fast, so you must be calm. They drilled it until June's body ached from the throws. He learned to roll, to dissipate the force. He learned to stand up quickly, calmly, always facing his opponent, never showing panic. Outside the gym, Mina engineered a chance encounter. In the logistics simulation lab, she partnered with Vril, the Selenian who had laughed with her clicking sounds. They were tasked with solving a supply route problem. Vril was clever and quick, her long fingers flying over the console. Mina worked silently beside her, inputting data. When Vril reached an elegant solution, Mina nodded. "That is efficient. It respects the limits of the terrain." It was pure praise, with no edge. Vril blinked her large black eyes, surprised. "You are not angry?" "Anger is not efficient for this task," Mina said, looking at the screen. "Your solution is good. Why would I be angry?" Vril was quiet for a moment, her clicking subdued. "The other human, the one Gorv struck. You are his friend." "He is a cadet as we are," Mina said, finally looking at her. "Gorv was also a cadet who broke a safety rule. My feelings about one do not change the facts of this simulation. Your work is correct." It was a disorienting act of fairness. Vril had expected hostility, a grudge. She received none. The lack of expected anger was somehow more powerful than anger itself. Vril did not apologize, that was not her way, but the constant, subtle clicking of amusement that usually followed Gorv was heard less often from that day on. The whispers about the humans grew. They were not louder whispers. They were quieter, more curious. "Did you read the Human post on defensive psychology? The small one, June, he moves differently now. Have you seen?" The announcement came over the Academy network one evening. A mandatory public sparring tournament. It was part of the combat curriculum. Matches were random draw, full contact with padded suits. It was a showcase of strength and skill, a chance for cadets to earn respect. Gorv stood up in the common room when he heard, a wide grin on his face. "Finally," he boomed. "A real test. No more rules, no more little talks. Just the strong and the weak." He looked directly across the room at June, who was studying a datapad. "I hope I get a real challenge this time." The room tensed, waiting for a response. A flinch, a sign of fear. June looked up from his pad. He met Gorv's gaze. His face was calm. He did not smile. He did not frown. He simply looked, held the gaze for 3 steady breaths, and then nodded once, as if acknowledging a statement about the weather. He returned to his study. The expected confrontation fizzled into nothing. Gorv's grin tightened, confused by the lack of fuel. The laughter he expected from the room did not come. The quiet had grown too thick for it. June felt his own heartbeat, steady and slow. He had not chosen the ground yet, but he was ready. The tournament pairings were announced at morning muster. They glowed on the large screen in the central hall, a sprawling bracket of names from 100 species. Cadets crowded around, searching for their own, then their friends', then their rivals' names. There were murmurs of excitement, groans of disappointment. June did not push forward. He stood at the back, practicing the breathing Mina had taught him. In hold out. He felt the noise of the crowd wash over him without pulling him in. He watched as Gorv, at the front, let out a booming laugh and slapped the back of a fellow Tarkonian. He had drawn a gentle, herbivorous cadet from a low-gravity world. It would be a quick, brutal match, a show of force. Mina stood beside June, her eyes scanning the list with methodical calm. She found his name. Her expression did not change. She turned and looked at him. The bracket is good. You are on the opposite side from him. You will not meet unless you both reach the final match. June nodded. It was a small relief. It meant he could potentially fight others, gain experience before facing the mountain. But the thought of reaching a final was a fantasy. He was just hoping to not be humiliated in the first round. Then, a ripple went through the crowd near the front. Commander Kale, his gray, stony skin and impassive face cutting through the cadets, was walking towards the main terminal. He typed a quick command. The bracket shimmered and updated. A new line was drawn. A collective gasp. Then a hushed silence fell over the hall. On the screen, next to June's name, was now the name of his first-round opponent. It was not the gentle herbivore. It was Cadet Gorv. The match had been manually changed. All eyes turned to June. He felt their weight, a physical pressure. He saw the shock on the faces around him, the sudden, hungry interest. He saw Gorv's head snap around, his eyes finding June across the hall. A huge, predatory smile spread across the Tarkonian's face. This was a gift, a public chance to finish what he started. June's heart hammered against his ribs. The calm he had practiced shattered like glass. His hands felt cold. This was too soon. He was not ready. He looked at Mina, his eyes wide with a silent plea. Mina's face was still. She was looking not at the screen, but at Commander Kale. The commander's expression was unreadable. Then Mina looked back at June. She gave a single, sharp nod. It was not a nod of sympathy. It was a command. Remember. Breathed in that moment. A strange clarity cut through June's panic. This was not a random act. This was part of the test. This was the ground being chosen for him. He could stumble on it, or he could stand. Gorv began to walk towards him, the crowd parting like water before a ship. The murmurs started again, excited, anticipatory. This was the drama they wanted. Vril followed in Gorv's shadow, her clicking sounds soft but present. Gorv stopped a few feet from June, looking down at him. "Looks like the officers want a better show," he rumbled, loud enough for everyone to hear. "No more hiding in the bracket for you, little human." The old shame, the memory of the laughter, rose in June's throat like bile. He wanted to shout. He wanted to shrink. But he saw Mina, standing just behind Gorv's shoulder. Her gaze was locked on him. Steady as a rock, he remembered the quiet room. He remembered the tree with deep roots. He took a breath. In. Hold. Out. He did not look away from Gorv's eyes. He straightened his spine, not in a challenge, but in simple posture. When he spoke, his voice did not tremble. It was quiet, but it carried in the hushed hall. "Cadet Gorv," June said. The formal title sounded strange in the tense air. "I submit a formal request to confirm the match. I wish to learn from a superior opponent." The words hung in the air. They were the exact words from the Academy Regulation Manual for requesting a training spar with a higher-ranked cadet. They were words of deference, of humility. They were not the words of a challenge. But by saying them, June was not being forced into this fight. He was accepting it. He was wrapping it in protocol, in respect. He was changing the story. Gorv's grin faltered for a second, confused by the script. He was ready for fear, for anger, for bravado. He was not ready for a polite request. He couldn't refuse it without looking weak. The trap was not one of strength, but of manners. Commander Kale's voice echoed from the front. The match is confirmed. Cadet June has requested the engagement for training purposes. Observe and learn, all of you. The emphasis was subtle, but it was there. For training purposes. This was not merely a bully crushing a victim. It was now a lesson. The framework had shifted. Gorv recovered, puffing out his chest. I will teach you a lesson you won't forget, he snarled. But the edge of triumph was gone from his voice. It was just bluster now. As Gorv turned and stomped away, the crowd buzzing with new energy, June felt the fear return, cold and real. But beneath it, like a deep root, was something else. A solid piece of resolve. Mina walked up to him. You have already begun, she said quietly. You chose the terms. He now fights to prove he is the teacher. You fight to show you are a student who learns quickly. The pressure is on him. Remember the breath. Remember the spaces between the thunder. June nodded, his mouth dry. The path was set. The laughter he heard now from some in the crowd felt different. It was nervous, expectant, but not cruel. They were not laughing at a victim. They were waiting to see what the student would do. The quiet had taken hold, and in that quiet, the first move had already been made. The arena was a bowl of noise and heat. The entire academy seemed packed into the tiers that rose around the central combat circle. The air vibrated with the chatter of different languages, the hum of anticipation. Spotlights cut through the dimness, focused on the padded floor in the preparation chamber. June pulled on his sparring suit. The padded material felt heavy, unfamiliar. His hands trembled slightly as he fastened the seals. He closed his eyes. Hold. He pictured the quiet room. He pictured the tree. Mina stood with him. She did not give a pep talk. Remember the drone, she said, her voice calm. See the shoulder move before the arm. See the weight shift before the step. Do not fight the force. Meet it, join it, and guide it past. Your goal is not to knock him down. Your goal is to make him miss until he knocks himself down. A chime sounded. It was time. The walk to the arena entrance felt long. The roar of the crowd grew louder with each step. He saw Gorv entering from the opposite side, raising his thick arms to incite the cheers of his supporters. The sound was a physical wave. Then June stepped into the light. The noise did not change, but its quality did. It was not a unified cheer. It was a mixture, calls of support from a few, loud boos from Gorv's friends, but mostly it was a vast, curious murmur. Thousands of eyes, multifaceted, glowing, slitted, and human, were fixed on him in the center of the circle. Gorv bounced on the balls of his feet, a predator eager to pounce. June stopped at his mark. He did not bounce. He settled into his neutral stance, knees soft, shoulders relaxed. He gave a short, formal bow as was customary. Gorv ignored it, just cracking his neck. Commander Kale's amplified voice cut through the din. Cadets, this is a training match. Begin. Gorv exploded forward. It was the same move as on the training deck, a direct, overpowering charge meant to end things quickly. The crowd roared. June did not meet him. He took a single, precise step to the side, pivoting on his back foot. It was the move he had practiced 1,000 times. Gorv's rush past him. So close June felt the wind of it. Gorv skidded to a halt, surprised. A laugh went up, but it was different. A laugh of surprise, not mockery. Gorv turned, scowling. He came again, slower this time, throwing a wide, powerful punch. June saw the shoulder dip, the weight commit. He didn't block. He moved inside the punch as Mina had taught him. He let Gorv's massive forearm slide over his shoulder and used the momentum to turn, putting himself momentarily behind Gorv. He didn't strike. He just moved away. A hush began to fall over sections of the crowd. This was not what they expected. Gorv growled, frustration building. He launched a series of attacks, jabs, kicks, grabs. Each time, June was not where the force landed. He deflected a punch with a forearm redirect that made Gorv stumble. He avoided a grab by stepping in close, then slipping under Gorv's arm. He was a shadow, a current of air. June's world narrowed to the space between them. He saw everything. The flare of Gorv's nostrils with each heavy breath. The slight drop of his left guard when he threw a right cross. The way his right heel lifted when he was about to lunge. The thunder of Gorv's anger was loud, but June was quiet inside. He heard the spaces. Minutes passed. Gorv was sweating now, his movements growing heavier, less precise. June's breaths were controlled, steady. He had not thrown a single offensive strike. He had only defended. He had only existed. He's just running. Someone from Gorv's faction yelled, but the cry was weak. This did not look like running. It looked like a strange, patient dance where one partner refused to collide. Gorv, furious and embarrassed, made his mistake. He saw an opening. June's back was near the edge of the circle. With a bellow, he charged in for a tackle, intending to drive June out of bounds and through the wall. All his weight, all his anger, was committed forward. June saw the heel come up. He saw the imbalance. Instead of trying to flee, he did the opposite. He stepped into the charge. He met Gorv's body not with resistance, but with alignment. He grabbed Gorv's charging arm, turned his own hips, and used the Tarkonian's immense forward momentum as a lever. It was the throw Mina had drilled into him 100 times. Gorv's own power lifted him from his feet. He flew through the space where June had been. His charge suddenly turned into helpless flight. He landed on the padded mat with a sound like a sack of grain dropped from a height, skidding to a stop just inside the boundary line. The arena was plunged into absolute, dead quiet. Not a cheer. Not a boo. Not a whisper. It was a silence so complete June could hear the hum of the spotlights. He stood, breathing evenly, in the center of the circle. He did not celebrate. He did not stand over Gorv. He simply turned and faced his fallen opponent, and then, as he had at the start, he offered a shallow, formal bout on the mat. Gorv pushed himself up onto his elbows. He was not hurt. The padding had done its job. But the look on his face was one of pure, uncomprehending shock. He stared at June, then at the silent, watching thousands. The laughter he loved, the validation of his strength, was gone. It had been replaced by this crushing, respectful silence. Commander Kale's voice broke the stillness. Match. Victory to Cadet June on points and ring control. The quiet held for a second longer. Then, it wasn't broken by a roar, but by a wave of sound that started as a murmur and grew. Conversation, analysis, exclamations of disbelief. It was the sound of a story being rewritten in real time. No one was laughing. Vril, watching from the sidelines, was utterly still, not a single click escaping her. June walked to the exit. He did not look back. The silence followed him out, clinging to him more powerfully than any cheer ever could. He had not shouted. He had not traded blow for blow. He had simply turned their laughter into quiet, and in that quiet, everyone had heard the truth. The victory did not make June a hero. It did not fill the halls with cheers for humanity. Instead, it left a thoughtful quiet in its wake. In the days that followed, June went to his classes as before. But now, when cadets looked at him, their eyes held questions, not jokes. Some gave him a nod, a gesture of professional respect. No one laughed. Gorv was seen less often in the common areas. When he moved with a different energy. The swagger was gone, replaced by a stiff, brooding silence. He had not been beaten by a stronger force. He had been unraveled by a calmer one. That was a problem his philosophy could not easily solve. A week after the match, June was in the logistics lab. He was working on a problem, inputting data on a console. He felt a presence beside him and looked up. It was the Cliction cadet. Tick. His chitin plate was fully repaired, a slightly shinier patch on his carapace. He did not speak with words, but his species communicated through a combination of delicate mandible clicks and gestures. He placed one delicate, crystal-like hand on the console, a ritual gesture of thanks among his people. Then he bowed his head, his large, compound eyes glinting in the light. It was a profound gesture of respect. He held it for a moment, then turned and walked away, his movements quick and silent. No laughter, no mockery. Just a quiet debt acknowledged. June felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with pride. It was the feeling of a circle closing. The principle that had seemed so foolish and costly on the training deck had finally been seen in Commander Kale's Advanced Tactics class. The match was the subject of the day's lesson. The stone-faced instructor played the footage on the main screen. He did not praise June. He analyzed. "Observe," Kale said, his voice dry as dust. "Cadet Gorv operates on a theory of overwhelming force. It is a valid theory against a static opponent." He paused the video, pointing at June's stance. Cadet June removed himself as a static target. He turned the match from a test of power into a test of endurance and decision-making. He changed the nature of the game. Kale looked at the room. "This is a form of psychological warfare. You must always fight the battle on the terrain that suits you, not your enemy." Cadet Gorv was fighting a war of domination. Cadet June was fighting a war of attrition. They were not in the same conflict, even though they stood in the same ring. He turned his gaze to Mina, who sat, as always, perfectly attentive. "Cadet Park Mina. Your historical analyses in the Forum, the Hill in Seoul, the River Defense, they focus on this concept. The strength of a defended purpose. Explain its tactical value beyond morale." Mina stood. "Commander, a soldier who understands the why can adapt when the how fails. They can find new ways to hold the line, or to retreat in good order to hold another day. A soldier who only understands force knows only one tool. When it does not work, they have nothing. The defended purpose is a weapon that cannot be disarmed." Kale gave a slow, approving nod. "A weapon that cannot be disarmed," he repeated. "Note that, cadets, the strongest armor is not worn on the body, but carried in the mind." Dismissed. The lesson was over. The human cadets had not been celebrated, but they had been studied. Their methods were now part of the Academy's tactical vocabulary. This was a deeper form of respect than any trophy. That evening, June found Mina at their usual spot in the observation dome, looking out at the swirling blues and purples of the nebula that filled the viewport. The stars were sharp and cold against the dark. "It's quieter now," June said, standing beside her. He meant the academy, the halls, the way people looked at him. Mina nodded slowly, her reflection ghostly in the thick glass. "Quiet," she said, "is not the same as peaceful." She turned to look at him. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Peaceful means the fight is over. Quiet means the fight has changed. It means they are listening, not laughing. Listening is more dangerous for them. It means they have to think. June understood. The laughter had been a wall. It was easy to hide behind. The quiet was an open space. In that space, ideas could grow. Questions could be asked. The story of human weakness was gone, replaced by a puzzle of human resilience. He thought of Tick's silent thanks. He thought of Gorv's confused silence. He thought of the tactical diagrams on Kale's screen, his own movements picked apart like an interesting bug, but a bug that had won. "They don't know what to make of us now," he said. "Good," Mina replied, turning back to the stars. "Let them wonder. Let them study. While they are figuring out whether we are strong or weak, we will be getting better. While they are learning about our past, we will be working on their future." They stood in a comfortable silence, looking out at the infinite dark. The silence around them in the academy was no longer one of mockery or pity. It was the silence of a page turning, of a lesson being absorbed. It was the sound of a new standard being set, not with a shout, but with a breath, a step, and a quiet, unwavering principle. The laughter had been transformed, and in its place was something far more potent. Respect, earned the hardest way possible.